All righty, everybody. Let's talk about the Florida Panthers, who just won their first Stanley Cup in their 30th season. And what a perfect script we had tonight. I'm gonna, you know what? We were talking about this on Patreon after Game 1 of the Stanley Cup. We saw why Florida made the most sense to win this cup. Got to shout out my man Brandon Martin. He's one of the patrons. He's the one that tipped me off to this. So we're going to go through this piece by piece. I'm going to show you just how scripted this is, what this has to do with the 1945 Stanley Cup Final, and what it's got to do with Donald Trump and the upcoming 60th U.S. presidential election. Now, I tried to get the camera working on this thing. Shit didn't work. And you also have to excuse me because I'm a little, for whatever reason, I can't talk. I don't know what's happening. Lost my voice. For some reason, I've been under the weather. So I'm going to try to go through this as efficiently as possible. So Florida gets it done over the Edmonton Oilers. Now, I put out a video back at the before the season began in early October, talking about why I expect Canada to break the 31-year curse in 2024. Now the question remains, how long are they going to make Canada wait? Now, in light of how this is synced up with the U.S. presidential election, Canada turns 157 years old on July 1st. And they're having their election in 2025. So we'll keep an eye on that. But I'm not going to go against what I said back in September 16th. Back when I first learned about gematria, I was talking about how the first pick I put out was Leafs will win the Cup in 2024 and break the 57-year curse in 2024, when the word hockey in gematria, which we'll get to, sums to 31, and hockey's Canada's sport, and they'll win Canada their first cup in 31 years. It is not to be, and I do gotta say, I see Zach on his Patreon page. He keeps talking about it. I've followed it every round of the playoffs. He keeps talking about, well, I'm going with my prediction with the thought that Canada breaks the 31-year curse in 2024. I'm like, dude, cite your source, bro. I've been saying the same damn thing since September of 2016. The exact same thing. So please cite your source. That's exactly what RFG Chosen One did back in 2020, where every time I put out a video talking about why Tampa would beat Dallas in the Stanley Cup in the COVID year, he copied it like literally within hours, which is part of the reason why I started the Patreon in the first place. Anyway, I mean, I used to leave all the comments on Zach's old channels before he got his channels deleted. So I don't know. Unless somebody happens to have those screenshots, that has since been lost to history. So I don't know. Maybe Sports Gematria has got them somewhere. I don't know. But let's go through this. And yes, unlike somebody else, I bet on my own picks. I bet on my own picks. Every one I put out, I bet on. All right. And this was what I did at the beginning. This pick here, Toronto over Edmonton, I put $100 on it. This was when Toronto was either down 2-1 or 3-1 to Boston. I thought, you know what? Edmonton's got a real shot to be there this year. We talked about the possibility of, sooner or later, they're putting McDavid in the final. And I thought, you know what? This is the time to get really big odds. And I also did one with Winnipeg, because Winnipeg, as we talked about, if you watched the first video, I'll link it in the description if you haven't seen it. You can go on there and comment what a dumbass I am. That'll help boost the algorithm and bring more people to the challenge, so I'd appreciate that. I talked about the significance of Toronto in 61 and why that could happen if they put the Jets there. So I put 150 down there, put 100 there. It was not to be. Like I say, the Stanley Cup back in 2016, 2017, I got videos on every Stanley Cup going back to 2017. They've all been rigged the exact same way. And it's even proof that 1945 was scripted, and we're going to get to that. But it used to be a cakewalk every year, and it's not anymore. It's more tricky now. But you know what? I'm going to keep on working. We're going to keep on trucking. And then I went to Ohio, and I said, you know what? I'm just going to put $100 down on Florida to win the series in Game 5, and I'm going to show you why we thought Game 5 made sense. But I totally get why it went to Game 7. I completely understand. I see it clearly now. And I also threw this baseball game in there because I figured the Orioles probably getting that 43rd win against the Rays. Tampa Bay Rays is 43, so it was not to be. But hell, even with that $350 lost, I'm still over $100 in the plus because of that 14 parlay we hit during the Super Bowl. But anyway, let's get into this. So this is what Brandon caught, okay? And I feel stupid for not catching this. All right, the Florida Panthers, they got the same birthday as Donald Trump, June 14th. Okay, the Panthers were established June 14th, 1993. They were established on Trump's 47th birthday. Now, the reason we thought it would be likely to end in Game 5 was because if the Panthers won June 14th, the 166th day of the year, again, this is the language of gematria, the ancient practice of coding letters into numbers. Florida Panthers sums to 166, and June 14th, the 166th day of the year, had the Panthers won in Game 5, they would have been 16-6 in the playoffs, and it was the 47th matchup all time between the Panthers and the Oilers. And, of course, they were established on Trump's 47th birthday. So that had a lot of legs to it. But I'm going to show you why this went to Game 7. So anyway, Trump number 45, right? This was the Oilers' 45th season. Okay, they also clinched a playoff spot on April 5th, 4-5. Now, look at this. Look at how perfect this is. Election day, right? November 5th, 2024. From the date the Oilers were established as an NHL franchise, they were originally established as a WHA franchise, which merged into the NHL in 1979. They were originally established as the Alberta Oilers back in 1972, but their NHL franchise date is June 22nd, 1979. That's when the WHA merged with the NHL. And from their birthday to the election was 136 days. And that's why I said you're probably seeing the Oilers get their 136th playoff loss all time. Now, you have to be careful with stat news because at the time of me uploading this, the NHL's official site, they don't have this updated yet. It shows their record is 189, 36, and 1. They are not. They are 189, 136. The reason it says 1 is because of the 1988 Stanley Cup Finals, where they tied Boston 3-3, and then the power went out while the game was 3-3 in Game 4 with the Oilers up 3-0. So that game was just suspended. It doesn't count. The NHL doesn't count it in its official records. I don't know why StatMuse does. So basically the 1988 finals, to make a long story short, Edmonton swept the series 4-0 in 5 games, if that makes any sense. So again, the reason Edmonton was there, right? Edmonton, Alberta sums to 60. This is the 60th presidential election, and they were in their 45th season after clinching a playoff spot on 4/5 when Trump was number 45. And Donald Trump is also 60 for the record. So Donald, this is what I totally feel like an idiot for this. And this is why, because I sat there and I was friggin' manifesting about this for the last 2 days, trying to make sure I had all the pieces together. And we'll get to exactly what I put out on Patreon in a second, the screenshot I took. But Donald Trump, right? His author name, the name of his website is Donald J. Trump, right? That's literally his website, donaldjtrump.com. And I just, oh my God, I feel so stupid for not catching this. Donald J. Trump sums to 49. Florida, which has the same birthday as Trump, wins the Stanley Cup in the 49th game all time with the Oilers on the 176th day of the year. Now, ordinarily, June 24th is the 175th day of the year, but 2024 is a leap year. So they get it done in the 176th, on the 176th day of the year in the 49th matchup. Again, Florida established as a franchise on Donald Trump's birthday. It's also the U.S. flag's birthday, right? The U.S. once again keeps the Stanley Cup from Canada. So this was a big omission too. This was, damn it. But this right here, Donald Trump, again, born June 14th, okay? He became 78 years old the next day, the following day after Florida went up 3-0 on the Oilers. And then, while Trump is 78 years old, his first day of being 78 years old starts the 3-0 comeback for the Oilers. They become the first team in 78 years to come back from a 3-0 deficit in the Stanley Cup Finals. And, of course, Oilers, when you run the alphabetic order, sums to 78. So check this out. This is just, again, it truly, like I say every year, they couldn't have scripted this any better. So look at the 1945 Stanley Cup Finals. The 1942 Stanley Cup Finals was what the hell was that? Toronto over Detroit. Toronto came back from 3-0 down on Detroit to win the Stanley Cup. This time, Detroit comes back from 3-0 down to Toronto, but they lose Game 7. And that's why I was thinking, history's probably repeating itself. And sure enough, and it repeated itself entirely, right? Those who don't know their history are doomed to repeat it, right? Again, Oilers 78, they do something that hasn't been done in 78 years, and then they lose by the exact same score. The exact same score. They lose 2-1. Florida wins tonight 2-1. So the exact same score as what the Leafs. I told y'all, even though my Leafs pick was wrong, I told y'all the Leafs were going to be part of the script. So Babe Pratt, right? Look at this. This is crazy. Babe Pratt scored the game-winning goal for the Leafs when they beat the Red Wings, meaning he scored the second goal for the Leafs in this game that proved to be the series clincher. Look at this. He died December 16th, 1988. The same date the Panthers and Oilers played in the regular season this year. And they win it 5-1. Florida does. Truly, you couldn't have scripted it any better. And remember, when the Oilers forced a Game 7 by beating the Panthers in Game 6, what score did they win by? They beat them 5-1. So notice how from the date of Game 7 to the 36-year anniversary of the death of Babe Pratt is 176 days, just like Donald J. Trump. You could also say it's 170 or 191 days after the 35th anniversary, after this game was played. And, of course, 191 is the 43rd prime. Florida wins the Stanley Cup 4-3. Society of Jesus, known as the Jesuits. They're the ones who operate by the language of letters and numbers. They're a Catholic-Jewish alliance. Their name sums to 191. So you could also say it's 197 days before his January 7th birthday. And, of course, Stanley Cup Finals is 197. So Sam Reinhart, right? Poor Buffalo. When they gonna get a championship, right? Sam Reinhart, he scores the series clinching goal for the Florida Panthers 136 days before his birthday. His birthday is what? It's one day after the presidential election. And Stanley Cup sums to 136. So, again, he might be, for all we know, November 6th, that might just be the day when they announce Donald Trump as being the next president. Because, after all, in the United States, we don't have election day. We have like election week, election month, election year. It's all political theater as well. But, when this happened, Bob Cole, and I always talk about this. I have a previous video on the death of Bob Cole if you want to watch it. But I always talk about how when a guy dies in connection to a team that's currently in the playoffs, it's almost certainly their death nail. And when he died, I said in that video it was probably going to go to Game 7, and I did not like the fact that the Bruins could get the 5-1 versus the Leafs all time in Game 7s. I was like, I don't know. I'm not. This might be the end of the line for Toronto, and sure enough, it was. He died at age 90. Maple Leafs is 90. But you know what? I didn't know about I had no way of knowing this piece with Bob Pratt that they were actually going to do that. That he scored the winning goal, and this would have been, they would have made a 3-0 comeback. But what I should have known was the fact that Bob Cole, his birthday, he died on April 24th. His birthday, I should have just came out and said his birthday's the date of Game 7. of the Stanley Cup final. His birthday's the date of Game 7. The Stanley Cup final, it's going to Game 7. He's a legendary hockey broadcaster for Hockey Night in Canada, if you for those of you that don't know. And he died exactly 61 days before his birthday or Game 7. 61's the 18th prime. Edmonton just got their 18th loss in the Stanley Cup final. And that was the one thing initially when I made my first video before Brandon tipped me off to this. And the first video I put on Patreon, I was like, I just did it, I think, a day before the series. I said, I'm not really seeing a whole lot there. The only thing that really lines up is Edmonton getting their 27th win in the Stanley Cup final against the 27th state, Florida. I mean, there wasn't much there, but then he tipped me off to the Donald Trump piece, and I was like, I think you hit the nail on the head, and then I connected the rest of the dots, man. Teamwork, that's how it's done. So this is the post I put out on Patreon. I said, well, I don't typically like putting hyphens in front of numbers to make it fit, but I said if Edmonton wins away, they'll be 5-3 like Stanley Cup. But the Game 7 numbers, they all favored the Panthers. I was like, they can get the 116th win in Game 7. Edmonton's 116. If it went to overtime, they could have got the 27th win in the 27th state. RIP to Bob Cole, whose name equals 27. But I went on there to say, I said, remember the death of former announcer Bob Cole on April 24th. I said we covered then that his birthday was Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals. Well, here we are. Tonight's game is 134 days before the election, or a total span of 135 days. And of course, Stanley Cup's 134, Edmonton is 135, Bob Cole is 135, and home teams just became 13-5 in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup final. And I can guarantee you the next time a home team hosts Game 7 in the Stanley Cup finals, they're going to lose. And I said it's also a total span of 61 or a total span of 62 after Cole's death. And, of course, Stanley Cup finals is 61 and 62. That's because S is worth 1 in the most pure cipher of gematria. But, yeah, I said the Miami Marlins are also playing the Kansas City Royals tonight. Miami's on 27 wins. Kansas City's on 37 losses. Stanley Cup's 37. And what I meant to put up here as well is that the Royals, they got that 43rd win. Florida's 43. Panthers is 43. Stanley Cup is 37. And the Marlins had a perfect alignment back when they played the Cardinals the day of Game 5. When they lost that game, that made me go, uh-oh, like Scooby-Doo, ruh-roh. I'm like, they might be taking the L tonight now. And sure enough, they ended up doing that. But yeah, so I went on here and I said, with Edmonton, again, you can go back and watch everything I said about Canada in 24 and why 8 years ago I said why Canada would break the curse. It's not to be. Now the question becomes, how long does Canada wait? But I went on to say all the things with Canada in 24. Bob Cole's 27. Oilers can win their 27th game in the Stanley Cup Finals in the 27th state, Florida. But we kind of faded that after the Game 1, when Brandon tipped me off to the Trump thing. I said the Canadians, they made a big deal. Who was it? It might have been the BBC, or not the BBC. What's the CBC, the Canadian one? It was either them or TSN. They came out and made a big deal about Montreal celebrating their 30th anniversary of winning the Stanley Cup, because it's been 31 years, but it's only been 30 seasons since Canada's won the Cup. And I was thinking like, but actually, really, this should have been put down in the Florida section, because really I'm thinking, well, it's Florida's 30th season. Maybe that's a sign Florida's going to win it. What else I go on to say here? Yeah, it's been 81 seasons since the one and only time a team came back from down 3-0 in the Stanley Cup final. What's happened in the other playoff series since then? But, yeah, I remember I'm like, well, President Biden, President Trump, they are both 81. Biden supposedly got 81 million votes. He's from Scranton, Pennsylvania, where Interstate 81 runs through it. So that was a thought. But to me, the election, the fact that the Oilers' birthday is 136 days before the election and they could get that 136 playoff loss, that was definitely the top clue. And then, like I said in this video here, again, I won't play the whole thing here. If you're on the Patreon, you can go back and watch it if you haven't. But I go on to say the election is on the day, leaving 56 days left in the year, right? Remember the 5th of November, the year they tried to blow up British Parliament. But, yeah, Florida getting their 56th playoff loss and their 12th loss in the finals, I said that would be the devil's advocate narrative. Edmonton and Stanley Cup are both 37, the 12th prime. And then like I already said, they already had they already became the first team in 78 years to come back after trailing 3-0. Oilers, of course, 78. Oilers can stay on 70. So that's supposed to say playoff road losses. That's a typo. The Oilers can stay on 76 playoff road losses. Florida Panthers is 76. They did not. They got their 77th loss, which makes sense, right? Washington, D.C. in the 77th Meridian West, known as the American Meridian. Florida could get their 27th home playoff loss in the 27th state. Possible, but I was still thinking like, well, now you talked about it with Donald Trump. I'm like, well, Edmonton getting their 136th playoff loss 136 days before the election when Stanley Cup's 136 and Florida's got the same birthday as Donald Trump, who's going to probably win. Unless they put Sleepy Joe in there again. But I said that's probably the top clue. Game 7's 135 days before the election. Home team's trying to get to 13-5 in finals history. Edmonton and Bob Cole, 135. And again, Cole did die on the 115th day of the year. They could, you could argue home teams could have stayed on 115 wins in Game 7s, but staying on is never as good as picking up. And that's why I say, however, Edmonton 116 and that 116th win could be lurking. Edmonton can get their 18th loss in the finals. Bob Cole died 61 days before Game 7, the 18th prime. Paul Maurice of the Panthers, too. He got his 70th playoff win. Edmonton Oilers is 70. So I just wrote the conclusion. I said the Game 7 numbers favor Florida. The Stanley Cup history favors Edmonton, that being the Stanley Cup finals record, not the playoff history. The playoff history favored, the all-time playoff history favors Florida. Home teams get that win. Said Oilers get the 100. Yeah, I don't want to keep repeating what I've been saying. Connor McDavid, 163 days after your birthday, bro. 38th prime, Florida 38, Panthers 38. Remember the 38th state, Colorado, won the Stanley Cup the 163rd time it was presented. Yes, I said the 163rd time. This year's the 165th. The Stanley Cup predated the NHL. But maybe show up next time, Connor. Jeez. But guys, I think we hit it all. I think we hit all the key points. It is 2 a.m. right now, man. They start these games too goddamn late on the friggin' East Coast. Holy hell! I gotta take the short jaunt home, and I gotta get up in 4.5 hours. So I will talk to everybody soon. Till next time.